Okay, so welcome everyone. It is April 9th, 4 o'clock p.m. We're here with JJ Dewey, who is author of the Immortal series, also author of The Molecular Relationship, and many other books. There's a handful of books that I'm not even talking about. I believe he has the most sort of like blogs or written documents online in regards to just putting out information as much as possible. So just an amazing whirlwind of information that we can get from him. So I'm blessed to know him and blessed to call him a friend. And we're just, I'm trying to learn as much as I can from him. And I know a lot of people are in the same position here. So yeah, and there's a little comment here from Emily. She says, I have a common friend with JJ. I think it's Aga P. I don't know if you know that, JJ, if you know Aga P. But maybe it'll come to you
Yeah.
later on. But anyway, enough of that. If anybody else wants to introduce yourself, you want to share who you are, how you got to know JJ's work, we'll give it just 20 more seconds, and then we'll start with the questions here.
I'll share. My name's Anna Lee, and I'm a good friend of Emmanuel's for so long now. I knew him back when I lived in Utah, and now I'm in Georgia. And also his wife. I've met her at least virtually. But anyway, they're amazing. He's helped me. I've worked with him so much doing the emotion body code stuff, and anything he recommends, I'm like, okay, like I trust it and I'm here for it. So yeah, always supportive and just always benefiting from everything he's sharing. So thank you, Emmanuel, for everything you do.
Well,
Yeah,
what you say there reminds me of really an important teaching that we emphasize, which is earned and unearned authority.
Hmm.
There's a lot of authorities out there that we're supposed to
Sure.
trust that haven't really earned or proven themselves to be a reliable authority on the subject, whether oftentimes that subject is the salvation of your soul, of your very
Yes.
soul.
Amen.
And
So
we're
true.
supposed to trust them because somebody tells us we're supposed to trust them. Whereas somebody like Emmanuel, where you work with him and you know that he's a reliable guy, honest guy,
Right.
then when he says something, even if it sounds a little unusual, you take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so earned authorities are really important to have in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that as a compliment. And now I'm going to go with that energy. I'm just going to jog for an hour straight. So I appreciate that. Anna Lee, thank you for everything. And I'm just, to be honest, I'm grateful for people like you, Anna Lee, and you, Dee, you, Emily. There's a lot of people I know here, Joshua. What I love about this is that one of my mentors told me that says that our mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. You know,
Yeah.
the reality is that there's this book that I read called I'm trying to remember something about the Millionaire Mind, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, and he said something really interesting. He says you're either rich or you're broke, but you can't be both. And I'm sorry, you're either rich or you're either right or you're rich, but you can't be both. Sorry, you're either right or you're rich, but you can't be both. And I thought about that a lot. Like there's so many of our friends and family that love to be right. Like they
Mhm.
they just they just love it. They just swim in it. They just love in it. But then if you look at their life and what they're talking about, they're really poor or they're really broke or they're really struggling in that area, but they just love to be right about something. And
Mm.
so I made a decision back at age 26 that I want to find more ways to be wrong, you know? And if I could be wrong, I could be more rich. Because wherever I'm at in my life is because I feel like I'm right about a certain amount of things. If I want to elevate myself to the next level, I have to learn to be wrong with some of those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
when you find out you're wrong about something, then you advance because then you learn how to be right on that particular item.
exactly, exactly. Anyway, we'll give one more opportunity if anybody else just wants to quickly share your name, how you know about JJ, uh, and then we'll get started here. It's just good to kind of I don't want this to be about my show or JJ's show. We'd love to build a community and get to know you guys, you know. So if anybody else wants to share, who
Is there
you are.
anybody that's not hasn't read anything that I've written so far that's just kind of curious?
I haven't. But it looks amazing. I'm excited to read it and check
Okay.
it out.
Okay. Well, I'll be interested to see what you think then.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just get started here. So by the way, anybody who is on this, well, there's people still coming in. Okay. If there's anybody that would like a free copy of the Immortal series, I have about 56-ish more books here, and I'm just mailing it out like crazy. And so you guys get a free copy just for being on here. So I may post this on YouTube, I may post this on Heal, wherever it is. Just reach out to me and say, I would love a free copy of the Immortal series. It changed my wife and I's life, and it's something that I feel like should be a global phenomenon. Hopefully, it'll become a TV show, hopefully bigger than Lost. That's what we're trying to make it into a TV show. But anyway, enough about this information. I want to go
One
into.
more thing I might add, if anyone wants a free audio copy, I can send the whole thing, or it's also available on YouTube. But if you want it as an MP3, I can let me know and I can send you a link to download the whole thing.
Yeah, and maybe what I'll do to make it easier, a lot of these people are on my platform Heal. So if I get a copy of it, JJ, I'll just put it on top for everyone to have.
Okay, I could send you the link and then you can do that. Okay, I'll do
Yeah,
that.
that'll make it easy for you. If you guys are audio people, then you guys can have access to that. Um, but without further ado, again, JJ's here. He wrote an amazing book called The Molecular Relationship. And I'll just give you a quick 2 second summary of it, but I know he'll explain it way better. I'll probably butcher it. But long story short is that the atoms and molecules are they're basically setting up a pattern for us to how we're supposed to be in relationships. And it's amazing how na things in nature that obviously God made are kind of like telling us like we're supposed to be this way and we can be more powerful. And so I can't wait to ask him some questions. You guys get to know what it's really all about. But in your words, JJ, how would you describe the molecular relationship and how did this kind of vision come to you? I'm just curious, like when did it happen? What is the molecular relationship?
Okay, well, is are most of the group here familiar with the LDS teachings?
I think some are. Yeah.
More. Okay, well, I started out in the LDS church and started I got thrown out in 1979 for thinking incorrectly about some things. It wasn't anything I did, but it was what I was thinking that they discovered. And anyway, we investigated a number of offshoots and come across one guy that kind of had some interesting revelations. And he was one of these guys that believed in polygamy. And he really liked some of the stuff that I had written, and he got a revelation that I was supposed to write an article about marriage. And in his mind, I was what that was supposed to be was an article explaining the principle of plural marriage and everything. And at that time, you know, I was kind of bought into the regular Mormon thinking that plural marriage was probably a correct principle and it would be implemented when needed and different things like that. And a lot of these fundamentalists believed that plural marriage was discontinued with illegitimately, that it was not supposed to be discontinued. And this is what this particular guy believed. And so I kind of bought into that. And so I prayed about it and asked, am I supposed to write an article about marriage? And the answer I got was yes. And so I sat down several times and tried to start it, and nothing came. And I kept struggling with it, and especially when I thought about plural marriage, nothing came. And then I was reading about in Ephesians some of the words of Paul, where he talked about the woman is to be subject to the man as a man is subject to Christ. And that's very controversial scripture that a lot of people think is a terrible scripture. And but anyway, I was reading that, and then shortly thereafter he says, and herein lies a great mystery. And I thought to myself, well, what is the mystery? Oh, I never noticed that scripture before about a mystery in connection with the relationships of male and female, and the relationship of the male and female to the Christ. What is the great mystery? So I kind of was asking myself that question. And suddenly, out of the blue, I got a complete download of what the mystery was. And all of a sudden, I saw everything clearly in just an instant. And so I wrote the first version of the molecular relationship, which didn't have anything to do with physical polygamy. And I showed it to the guy that got the supposed revelation, which was actually, I think, a true revelation that day. I think he was inspired to ask me to write about marriage because of what it led to. But, and I titled the very first draft Molecular Marriage, I called it, instead of the molecular relationship. So I wrote this up and I showed it to him, and he just was shaking his head all the time he was reading it. He said, no, this is not it. No. And then shortly thereafter, he got another revelation that I had fallen from grace because of pride. And so we eventually cut off our relationship. But so anyway, then what it is it was a revelation concerning how basically the evolution of everything has progressed from the very beginning of creation, of any creation, before even this universe was created. And that is, you have smaller lives getting together to create greater lives, and then those units gathering together to create greater things still. And the consciousness of God is always focused on one part of creation in the worlds of time and space. And eons ago, the consciousness of God, of which we are all a part, and all of us participated in this creative process. But ages ago, our attention was on creating the atomic world. People don't realize the intelligence that had to go into the creation of the first atom. It took tremendous effort and time as we know it, but time was functioning on a totally different level at that time. So we participated in the creation of the atomic world and had many successes and many failures until we got to the point of what we call relative perfection. In time and space and form, there's nothing of absolute perfection does not exist. It's all relative perfection. And what relative perfection is when the creation gets so stable and so advanced that any tweaking of it really doesn't do much good. It's at that point where it's as good as it's going to get. Like let's take like Microsoft Word, for instance. I've had Microsoft Word from version 1, and I think now it's at least version 13 or something like that. And eventually they will get it to the point to where they can't really improve it anymore. So they'll just move on and use and go on to something else. And so when we did this when the creation of the first hydrogen atom, and then the atoms evolved, and the atoms eventually, to create something greater than the atom, we combine atoms together to create molecules. And when this, and this is the way the atom itself is created. The atom itself is created out of quarks. The quarks combine and they create something greater than themselves, which was the proton and the neutrons, and then in association with electrons. And then you have the atoms combine and they create something greater than themselves. And the simplest example of that is water. Water is created out of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. And the reason they combine is both of them lack a little bit of balance, because they need to get together and share electrons to create a more balanced substance. Now, what's interesting about oxygen and hydrogen is in their separate existence, they're very inflammatory, and they were used as rocket fuel to send us to the moon and the Saturn rocket. But when we combine them together, they produce a substance totally different than they are in their separate condition. Instead of being explosive, they're very non-explosive and very stable, and creating one of the most stable substances in the universe, which we call water. So, but the interesting thing is hydrogen and oxygen haven't lost their identity. Even though they've combined and created something totally different than they are alone, they still exist, and they could be separated. And like, say, we can take water and separate hydrogen out of it right now and use it as a rocket fuel if we wanted to, you know. But in the natural state, they combine and produce something greater than they are in their separate condition. And the revelation I had on this was that Jesus was a divine chemist, and he realized that each individual is a correspondence. Well, each male-female unit is a correspondence of a human atom. That plural marriage isn't the stable condition of the human family, but the male-female unit is. And the male-female unit constitutes one human atom, which is verified in the scriptures. In the book of Genesis, it says that God created male and female, and he called their name Adam. Not his name Adam, but the male and female together were called Adam. And and it's amazing how the word atom, A-D-A-M, sounds so much like Adam, A-T-O-M. And that's not entirely a coincidence. So the human atom, that there's a law that says as above, so below, and as below, so above. Everybody's heard that. But the correspondence is not exact. There's a correspondence, but this was how the atom was first theorized by these scientists. Looked at our solar system and they thought, well, maybe atoms are miniature solar systems, and they saw correspondences, and it helped them to figure out what atoms were like by using this correspondence, but the correspondence isn't exact. And we have correspondences from one kingdom to another. They're not exact, but they give enough details that using the intuition, you can figure out a lot of things that are true. So we have the human atom, and in the molecule that, and Jesus was creating a molecule of 12 atoms. And in creating a molecule of 12 atoms, they would wind up just like water has different properties, and oxygen that we breathe in the air, or hydrogen that's like a rocket fuel. Now they're trying to use it as a fuel for cars too. But just like water is different, when Jesus realized that when a human atom is created of 12 units, and the 12 units was the particular molecule that he wanted to create. Now, there's many different potential human molecules that can be created, but this was a very significant one. And so he completed the 12 units, but in addition to 12 men, there were also 12 women. And they balanced off the energies. And the female energy that balances off a male doesn't have to be your spouse. It just can be someone you're working with. But if your spouse is participating, then that would be the natural selection. Now, the way it works is, and is really a key to understanding it, is all of us are a little out of balance, just like the atoms are out of balance, and they join with each other to create molecules to become more imbalanced. And then the molecules join with other molecules and create life, and that brings even greater balance. And now the creation of God has shifted. It created these subatomic lives and got them as perfect as possible to make them. So everywhere in the universe, whether here or Alpha Centauri or other galaxies, hydrogen is the same. Even though each hydrogen atom varies just very slightly, they're all created on the same principle everywhere you look, because the creative intelligence got it as good as it can be created. So now all these subatomic particles have tremendous intelligence built into them, but they run like a computer program. So the attention of God just lets the computer programs run in the subatomic world, and the attention of God is now shifted to a higher level. And do you know where that main focus is? Yes.
Do we get a prize if we guess right?
That main focus is you and me, human beings. We are now the focus of creation. And not only human beings on the earth, but human type beings on all the planets in the universe. Self-conscious beings throughout the universe is the soul of the universe, and they are the creative force that is creating the next wave of creation. And the next wave of creation will be created just like the other one, where you have simpler units gathering together to produce something greater than themselves. And so Jesus completed the molecule of 12, and these 12 produced something much greater than themselves. And he taught them to use this power and sent them out. And when they come back, they said, yeah, even the devils are subject to your name, and they found they could do everything that Jesus could do, pretty much. And then came the time when Judas betrayed the Christ. And the interesting part about that was that it shattered the molecule. And when one atom is taken out of a molecule, then it's no longer that substance. Now we go back to water. You take one hydrogen atom out, it's no longer water. So they one atom was taken out of the unit, and so it was no longer functional. And so what happened was Jesus, all that energy from the molecule was going through Jesus, who was the link to molecules on the other side. And when Judas betrayed him, it produced a tremendous lack or suction of energy out of the whole molecule. And it says he took 3 with him to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he took these 3 with him, Peter, James, and John. Why did he just take these 3? And I believe it's because the others were so affected by the drain of energy that they didn't have the strength to go. These were the 3 strongest, and he took them with him. And then he said, watch with me. And that word watch comes from a Greek word that means be aware, lend your strength to me for 1 hour. That's all I ask, because he needed that in order to complete his mission. And he went and he just asked for 1 hour. So about 20 minutes elapsed, and he goes back to them, and they were all asleep. Now, why couldn't they stay awake? It was because that they were completely drained of energy, and the Christ himself was completely drained of energy, but he was the strongest and able to stay awake. And he woke them up and asked them, please, I ask you to stay aware with me for 1 hour, because the next powerful number, a very powerful number next to the 12, is the 3. And so with these 3 produced a trinity that could keep energy in circulation to make up for the gap produced by Judas. And so he went back and prayed again, and he felt that energy just sapping out of him, and he goes back, and they were asleep a second time. He wakes them up a second time, and then they still couldn't stay awake even with that second warning. And then he goes back again, and it says that he was then nigh unto death. Now, why was he nigh unto death? He was nigh unto death because that was such a drain on him after producing the molecule and having the energy drain out all the. It's like say having a water molecule, and then all of a sudden it was shattered, and so to hold the idea of the water molecule together is almost impossible. And so he was trying to hold the connection together, and he was nigh unto death. And then it says, an angel came down and strengthened him. Now, this angel was a being that was a member of the molecule of which Jesus himself was a member on the spiritual side, and he came down to give him strength. And so then, after he was strong enough for that energy that was given him by the angel, he goes back, and for the 3rd time, the disciples were all asleep. And he wakes them up, and he says, well, your support isn't needed now. The time has come. So anyway, then after the crucifixion and even the resurrection, the disciples were just ordinary men. There was no miracles, nothing. They went back to being fishermen, and decided to just go back to their normal lives, and they were just like anybody else until Jesus appeared to them. And then that filled them full of fire again. And then they decided to get together and finish the molecule off. There was 11 units, and they replaced Judas with Matthias. And this was in what is called the day of Pentecost. And when they replaced Judas with Matthias, apparently had some ceremony, all of a sudden, tongues of fire appeared over their heads, and there was a rushing of a mighty wind. And at that time, there were a gathering in Jerusalem of 16 different Jews from 16 different nations had gathered there for some event. And everybody heard this rushing of a mighty wind that took place around that when they added Matthias to complete the molecule again. And thousands of people came and to see what was going on. And Peter went out to meet them, and he spoke to them. And these people with 16 different languages heard Peter speak in their own language. Now, the number that gathered, that was believing in Christ after the resurrection, after all the miracles, was 120 people. But with this great miracle, do you know how many people were added at that event in just one day?
I believe it was 3,000, was it?
Right, 3,000 people. So they went from, for all of Jesus' life work, he had 120 people. In one day, without Jesus even being physically there, with one miracle, they added 3,000 people. And that's the power of the molecular relation. From that point on, the disciples were just not ordinary men again. They went out and did great miracles. Peter had such power that they came and laid the people in the streets, and as he walked by and his shadow passed over them, they were healed. And that was, he did tremendous things. Another time they put him in prison. Apparently they figured he was a slippery guy because they put him in a small prison cell, and they chained him hand. So they must have really figured he would be he must have some type of power or something, because they were really, I mean, 16 guards in a prison cell, chained hand and feet. And then it tells us that an angel came to deliver Peter, and the 16 guards all fell asleep. The chains fell from Peter's hands and feet, and he walked through the wall and appeared to preach to a group of the gathered disciples who were amazed to see him. But there were amazing occurrences back then after the molecule was put together. But the interesting part is, before the molecule was put together, I mean, before the betrayal of Judas, the molecular relationship produced tremendous powers for the disciples. When it was shattered, then they were just ordinary men again. And then when it was put back together, they were back to being having all the powers that Jesus himself had. And so anyway, the revelation I had was that it is after a generation, the knowledge of the molecule was lost, and and how it is created. It's just not created by gathering 12 or 24 people, but there has to be a link created between heaven and earth. And how this link is created, I won't go into the details, but it's in my book, The Molecular Relationship. And so my life's work has been to find the right people that can be usable to create the first molecule. And when the first molecule is created, then the second one will come much easier, and then the third, and eventually the molecular relationship will fill the earth.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. It's a very beautiful concept. I think um, the thing that I love about it most is that uh, it has biblical reference to it. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. It has biblical reference to it, but not only that, it's that a lot of people don't understand how helpful the women were in the process of Jesus's life with the disciples. There's a very skewed. They talk about, if you look at paintings, for example, you'll always see Jesus with the apostles, but there's two big groups missing. It's usually the women that were assisting. Like if the women weren't doing what they were doing, the men wouldn't be able to just go out there and do the work that they were doing. But also, so it's almost like the women sustained them in more ways than one. And also, usually there's huge crowds that follow them. Like solitude was probably not Jesus's greatest forte because he was always being crowded upon, but I'm interested in this because I feel like there's so much sacredness between a man and a woman. And a lot of people, I think in this fallen world, we look at it as just like people are not married and then they're married. Oh, we broke up. All right, time to come back, get a new person. Like it seems like it's just marriage can be almost like a roll of the dice. But I feel like with your concept of molecular relationship, you might consider it like your relationships that you have are more important than you'll ever know. For a husband and wife that are interested in the molecule idea, how does it benefit a couple? Like what benefits have you either seen personally or do you foresee in the future if there's a couple who's interested in trying to create the molecule?
Well, what creates the link between heaven and earth? What makes it possible is reaching what I call the 0 point. Now, if you're in a male body, you have there's two energies that create everything in the universe, positive and negative, male and female. Okay. And everything in the universe is a little bit off balance. Matter of fact, in order to create form, any form that you see about you, it's created because everything in it is just slightly off balance, and the pieces of you have gathered together to create greater balance. And then the greater pieces gather together again to create more balance still. And here we are in male and female bodies. Now, in the male bodies, you could say the males are charged between 1 to 10, and the females are charged between -1 to -10, you could say. Now, that's not minus bad or anything. It's just opposite of the male charge. Okay, so the male with a strong charge, say 7, 8, or 9, he'll be very aggressive, very strong, initiate, and look strong physically, usually. And so the female with a high charge, she'll be very magnetic and attractive. And with a lesser charge, then the female started looking a little bit more masculine. And those males with a lesser charge look a little bit more feminine and so on. And we cross over from life to life after a series of going through periods of male and female. All of us in different lifetimes have been male and female a number of times. But anyway, with the molecular relationship, the great part about 24, there's enough units there, even though they have different charges. They, if they're put together to balance each other off, the 12 counterbalancing, the 12 females counterbalancing the 12 males brings us very close to the 0 point, close enough that a connection can be made between heaven and earth. Now, also, we have to balance off the male-female energies within us. Typical, say, Emmanuel here, I would say his energies within him are around 60% male and maybe 40% female. And but so what he has to do is balance those energies off and put a little bit more attention on the female intuitive side, which he probably does quite a bit. And by balancing the energies off within yourself, then you can have greater contact to the spiritual realms and bring down greater knowledge and guidance for yourself. But this, you have to be able to reach the 0 point. Now, if you're a strong male, which Manuel is a very healthy, strong male, so he has to pay attention to the female side so that he's not out of balance. If he just went to his natural energies and just go with the flow, like you hear a lot of people tell you, you're always supposed to go with the flow. Well, there's two flows. There's the material flow and there's a spiritual flow. So if Emmanuel went with his natural flow, I like the Book of Mormon says, the natural man is the enemy to God. So if he were to just go with that natural flow, he would be really out of balance. But he has to use his mind and his will to examine these energies within himself, he has both the male and female energies, and balance them off and realize, hey, my pull is to really go with the male energy all the time, but I need to balance that off. And so by balancing that off, you put yourself in a position to where you can then make a spiritual connection with the higher realms and bring down your own personal revelation and inspiration. But if it's done as a group of 12 males and 12 females, then the power of using the 0 point is much more potent than it would be just as an individual balancing off those energies. And then eventually, when we get a lot of molecules, we'll have a group of 144,000. And that's like creating a correspondence of a human cell, kind of like with much more potency than has ever been seen upon the earth. But okay, well, I've thrown out a few things there. Is there any questions?
So that's the end game, right? It's the 288, right? Is that our goal?
Yeah, one step at a time. There's if you read the book, there's different types of combinations after the first molecule is created. Then the molecules gather and create greater units until you get to 144,000.
Yeah, so I just think it's very fascinating because again, I just feel like the male and female relationship again has a deeper capability. And I know right now we're in the age of the Aquarius. There's a lot of also talk about kind of like the feminine rising in men, you know? It's just a very, very interesting time. People weren't talking like this back in 1960 or 1980. But I feel like there's a lot of talk about a balance of the man, of the divine feminine increasing, because I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the output of the overly narcissistic male has been praised for too long, and the world where it's at right now has been sort of the output of too many narcissistic men being praised, and then now we put them on a pedestal, and there's just this off balance that we have now. But what are your thoughts on that?
And what happens is we're like pendulums. We swing. We have the pendulum for the Piscean age has swung, was dominated, even though it's a it's governed by very strong emotional energy, which is female. Uh, it was governed by uh, the male energy, and it swung in that direction. But then what happens is we begin to realize that extreme direction is not satisfying. So they start looking the other direction. And then the pendulum swings back. And it swings back when it hits the middle. There's quite a bit of enlightenment takes place because that's where the real truth is. But then it swings to the other direction, and people get a lot of wrong ideas about the other direction also. But with each swing of the pendulum loses a little bit of its power, and eventually it stops and settles at the 0 point. And that will be the end of our evolution. We'll reach perfection when that happens, relative perfection. But so we're swinging. We can we can see we're swinging over to where the female energy is getting a lot more power, but there's a lot of distortion with female energy and how it's supposed to be used. And we see a lot of people doing weird stuff and coming up with strange ideas, but that's to be expected because that's because we're imperfect beings. And so there is a realization, hey, we need to understand the female energy more. And it kind of started with Isaac Newton, because gravity is a female energy. The visible is male, the invisible is the female. And there's two types of energy in the universe, which is male and female, and it's displayed as radiant, and magnetic. The sun is a male energy because it's something that we see and we can feel, we can identify what it is. Gravity and magnetism is female, and it holds the whole universe together, but we can't see it. And so, in before the time of Newton, people realized there was gravity, but they didn't know what it was or even think about it. It was just there, you know. They didn't even think about what it did until Newton started to play around with it and figure out what it was. And that was also about the same time period that women started to look into their own rights and their own power. When the invisible began to be identified, the female started to come into her power, and her power has increased ever since. Right now, there's a big surplus of women graduating from college over men. Used to be men were almost all the college graduates were men. Now the majority are females, and the females do a lot better in school overall than men do. And they're better students because they're receivers, and that's another correspondence of the male female. Males are polarized as senders and females receivers. This is why in college, females get a lot better grades, and all throughout school in all the nations of the earth. The females always get better grades than the males, and the scholars can't figure out why that would be. It's because they're polarized in the sending, the receiving energy. They're really good at receiving. And like you get something new to try and figure out. The guy doesn't even want to read the instructions, or female will read the instructions. Like Artie, if I'm putting something together, Artie will say, "You need to read the instructions." I say, "I don't need any instructions. I'll just put it together." And she'll read the instructions and she'll say, "Hey, you're doing this wrong. Look, there's what the instructions." And she's laughing over there now.
There's too much truth behind that. There's just way too much. I don't know if I can handle that truth there.
Yeah,
But it's true though. Understanding our dynamic and our place. I feel, like I said, I feel that this book should be read by everyone who really wants to create a a more powerful relationship than they've ever been. I know, again, for those of you who are watching, for those of you who attended the group healing, we're giving you guys that book for free. You gave me a PDF of it so everyone can read it. It's on the top. I think I put it on the top of the group. But or feel free to message me. But if anyone has any questions at all, I know I want to kind of open it up real quick before we kind of end this call. And I want to thank you, JJ, for all the great
well, I might
insights.
add just one more thing. And now you work with healing a lot, and so what you're doing when you're successful, which I understand you are quite often, is you creating a balance of the male female energies, and this brings that healing access to healing much stronger. And so you're a good person to do this because you I can see you have a really good balance in that energy. You have respect for both sending, receiving, male, female, emotional, and mind.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'll go
no,
ahead. Go
thank
ahead.
you, no, thank you for sharing that. It's something I'll tell you guys privately. I've never shared this before on a public level. One of the things that gives me that insatiable hunger to help others, besides knowing that makes God happy that I'm serving His children, is that I used to get bullied a lot. When I was a kid, there wasn't a time in school where I didn't get bullied, and I'm very grateful that I chose a life where I got bullied. I'm grateful for my father who used to be physically abusive to me. I'm grateful for that because I know that I chose my dad and I know that I chose my mom. But there's something about when I look at someone who's dealing with physical issues or emotional issues, it seems like their emotions are kind of beating them up. And some of them have actual physical symptoms that due to the emotional self-abuse that they're creating. So I'm actually, in my mind, I'm preventing people bullying themselves due to the emotions that they've kept inside their body. Or maybe they're in a bad relationship that they should be out of. The man is the bully. And I'm there to be like, if I heal you enough, you'll be able to see what you're actually experiencing, and then instead of being desensitized and continuing to receive this bullying. So it's a weird, it's kind of a weird filter that I see things through. It's like everyone in some way is either in some form is receiving some type of bullying that they don't have to continue anymore if they just looked inward, And so
Yeah,
anyway, I
yeah.
just wanted to share that. I don't typically share that, but I feel like it's my drive is just like to prevent anyone from bullying themselves or having them get bullied, and to have emotional sovereignty. Those are my two favorite words to combine together, is to have complete emotional sovereignty. that the outer universe doesn't affect the inner universe. So anyway, anybody would like to share anything? If you have any questions for JJ, if you want to just take a quick, 8 minutes to answer some questions about whether it's his book, what he said, the molecular relationship. I'm just gonna leave it open for anyone if anyone wants to ask anything. Or feel free to comment it in the comment section, and then I will ask the question for you for those of you who are shy. And by the way, there's a healing session for being shy there, so I can help. My wife is a really big introvert, and some of you guys have witnessed my wife go from like shy, doesn't want to take a phone call, to be on stage in front of 3,000 people, and I'm like, this is called healing. This is the change, So, but anyway, if anybody wants to share anything, going once, going twice.
Yeah, I have a question. It was very interesting. I'm just curious, JJ, you said you used to be in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You were in, member, and now you're not, it sounds like. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's your religious views now? I'm just
Well, I just go by
Share a lot of
my connection, my spiritual connection to God, and I don't attend any other church. I see churches as like a kindergarten to get people started. Not only the LDS church, but the other churches do the same thing. They get people interested in a spiritual connection. Very little actual knowledge, just really basic stuff. And once a person progresses so far in any religion, or even these new age groups, or in any of these things, they begin to say, well, there's got to be more somewhere. And that more is always to be found in your own personal connection to the spiritual realm. And once you have that, and this one thing I found was that when I made this connection, before I made this connection, I felt very isolated. But when the connection was made, I never felt lonely again, because I feel I'm in connection with other invisible beings that surround us. And so we are actually never alone, even though we may feel alone. But when the connection is made, you should never feel alone, because you're not alone. And so if something interests you, if you like going to church, go to church. If you don't like it,
but what about
God is not going to punish you for not going.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing your perspective on that. I'm just saying, but what about, like, since you're talking about molecular relationships and, an eternity and different lives, so what about eternal marriage? What about covenants like that? That's only within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's not in other churches, but that's where people can get those eternal covenants made. You know what I mean? And so where does that tie in with your beliefs on the molecular relationship? I'm just curious, your take on that.
Okay, all ceremonies are to solidify spiritual, eternal things. Now, Joseph Smith made this statement. He says, where there's a beginning to something, there is an end. Now, if there's a beginning to your marriage, it would mean there is an end. But in the true reality, there's no beginning to our relationships. Each one of us have an eternal relationship with each other that had no beginning and will never have an end. And the ceremonies within the LDS Church are designed to stimulate the truth within you that love has no end. That if you truly love another person, that is an eternal marriage. And the ceremony around it is merely to bring you to that realization.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the purpose of all ceremonies and all religions, is to stimulate eternal truths that are already there. If um, if um, you may or may not believe in reincarnation, but I do, and the uh, in our series of lives, we're married to a number of different entities, and you can be, you can, if you realize and see the God within, the God presence within any individual on the planet, you can share an eternal love with that person. And in the end, we're eternally married to every other individual on the planet. And but we have in in our evolution, we have very close relationships with a number of individuals that are, you could say, are on the same wavelength with us. And so um, you could you could pick any individual, say like look at Emmanuel over here. You can look on his soul, and if you can see him the way he really is in the true reality, you could feel as eternally married to him as any other person on the planet. But so so all these things, and the same with baptism. It says that the Doctrine and Covenants actually says baptism is a dead work. You could be baptized 100 times, it wouldn't do you any good, it says. But the
Well, it says
baptism,
about the baptism of fire, like the spirit can't, it's just going through the physical motions, but if you're not like really doing it for the
right,
right. Yeah. So
right.
anyway, well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I just wanted to ask you too, are you married personally now or like, and how long? I'm just curious.
Yes, I'm married right now. This is, how long we've been married there? 30 some years?
37,
35 years?
37.
37 years. Okay. Lose track.
Okay, cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing about that. I appreciate your perspective.
Yeah.
Great questions, great questions. And anybody else, maybe one more question, and then we'll let JJ be on his way. I'm grateful that I could be your guinea pig for compliments, and appreciate that, JJ. And but yeah, if anybody has any more thoughts, insights, one of the things I just want to share real quick, just for a minute, is just say that a lot of the I was baptized in the faith when I was 26 years old. I came from the Catholic faith. And one of the things that I wrote in my journal was KQE. And what that means is keep questioning everything. And the thing is though, what happens, I feel like in churches and a lot of different faiths is that, me being an active member of the church, also sealed in the temple in San Diego and things like that. And it was a beautiful ceremony. The thing that I do respect is that Joseph Joseph's legacy, Joseph Smith's legacy was that he was a seeker of truth. He went to places where no member would ever go to or even dare talk about. In fact, he said many things where he said that if I tell the saints who I really am, they would actually kill me, and he had some knowledge that he had to kind of keep close to his chest because every time he brought something new, people would leave like by the troves. King Follett's sermon, 2,000 people left the church. So that's interesting. Wherever there's truth, there's always people that can't handle it at that moment. Similar to Jesus saying, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. And it said disciples left because they said, do we have to be cannibalists to follow you? It didn't really register the way that Jesus was actually meaning it. So I think when there's important information that even from JJ that I listened to, they're not things you just kind of take in and go, that makes sense. You have to kind of sit on it, ponder about it, pray about it, just kind of just swim in it a little bit. Or I tell people to put it on the bookshelf and leave it. If it's too heavy, just leave it there and then take it out from time to time to ponder about it. And because of that, I've grown in happiness and joy more. You can't fake happiness and joy because when you're a truth seeker, you find it all the time. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And I've been that person that I kept, even in the church, I kept digging, I kept being hungry. And so that's my admonishment to the world is like stay hungry, keep reading, keep learning, keep growing. And JJ for me has, when he came into my life, I've been learning from his books and go, this is really deep. If I follow this, I can help more people and I can help my family more. I can be a better human. And so anyway, thank you, JJ. That was my me giving you a flower there. But I appreciate you guys for being on here. I mean, we're all troopers here. We've been here for an hour and 12 minutes talking about a molecule. Like, it's like we could have been doing so many other things, but we cared about this insight about how our relationships are more sacred than we think. When you're with your partner, know that there's more depth to you and your partner. If you're dating somebody right now, think about, is this person going to bring you to this the depth that JJ has been talking about, that you can maybe one day create this molecule structure and be more and have miracles in your lives. If not, then you deserve that. You deserve to have someone that will take you to the next level. My wife always pushes me. I always push my wife. We're constantly trying to go higher. No one's trying to drag anybody down. And so anyway, those are my last final thoughts there. JJ, is there anything else you want to share, maybe a last thought before we leave here?
Okay, well, I hope I didn't say anything to scare anyone off, but but anyway, yeah, I come across a lot of things in my life that really threw me for a loop at first, but I've always tried to stay open, and I'm glad I did because uh, I have found some of the things that didn't conform with what orthodoxy taught me. I found many of them to be actually true. And once you find something, a truth that is new, it's like a new piece to the great puzzle. And you add that piece in, and the whole becomes a little bit clearer. And then you add another piece, and you get a little bit more clearer picture of the wholeness. And eventually we will see clearly, as Paul talks about, and see who we really are and what is our true destiny. So it's
That's
nice to meet with you and appreciate the invitation. And I'll be interested to see comments on my books from your group there.
Yeah, thank you so much, JJ. I really appreciate your time. Again, a little quick announcement too. On this coming Sunday at 5 p.m., we are doing the Immortal series. So this is how we're starting off our molecular. We're calling it the we have a specific name for it. That I posted on my Facebook. If you're on my Facebook, I kind of posted it. But anyway, it's has to do with the molecular, but it's a book club. It starts on Sunday at 5 p.m. And JJ is I tugged and pulled a little bit, and he's willing to come on Zoom with us again. And we're basically just going to share what's your favorite part of chapter one in the Immortals. And people could share. You could just listen to it. You don't have to share anything. And then maybe like a quick 10-minute Q&A at the end. And then every week we're just going to read one chapter and kind of just share what insights you got from it. I know we can all learn from each other. So it's going to be a pretty exciting book club. It's going to be called the Molecular Order Book Club. So Molecular Order is the name of it.
Molecular Order Book Club studying the immortal.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm just saying that and not if we get enough people to see new insights, maybe the molecule is supposed to come around. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so thanks guys for being on here. I appreciate you, and I will put this on my YouTube. I'll post this also on the replay and heal. And JJ, I think you were going to send me a copy of the Immortals audio, and I'll
Oh,
place
yeah.
that for
Yeah. I'll
yeah,
send you
send
a
it.
link to that.
So if you're more of an audio person, then we're gonna place that for you in heal. So thanks guys for being on here. I wish you guys the best, and God bless.